Whenever you're ready. I think.
Okay, I'm filling in as the vice chair tonight, and I will call this meeting to order. And I'd like to welcome folks who've come from the public, both in the house and online. And we don't do this every single time, although it's written every time. But I'd like to do the land acknowledgement, or ask Commissioner Freitas to do the land acknowledgement tonight.
Sure. So the land acknowledgement reads, the land that Eureka rests on is known in the Wiyot language as Jarjiji. Past actions by local, state, and federal governments removed the Wiyot and other indigenous peoples from the land and threatened to destroy their cultural practices. The city of Eureka acknowledges the Wiyot community, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. This acknowledgement demonstrates the city's commitment to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism.
Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Freitas?
Here.
Oh, try again. Commissioner Freitas?
Here.
Commissioner Kraft?
Here.
Commissioner Benson?
Here.
Thank you.
And will Commissioner Kraft please lead us in the salute to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes, item C1. And I was absent last time, but I did look at the meeting minutes, and I just have one little comment on the meeting minutes. Just because I know the person personally, a list of people were named who spoke, and one was Dan Dion, and his last name was spelled D-I-O-N, and it's D-I-O-N-N-E. Small correction, it was phonetically correct.
So I have reviewed the minutes. They track with, I was present, they track with what I remember from the meeting, so I move approval.
Do you want to, are you open to doing an approval with the modification?
Absolutely.
Okay, then I would happily second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any additional comment? Okay, then I call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, and that's any against and no abstentions. Okay, so moved. Okay, oral communications. This is a fun part of the meeting. This is where commissioners and or public can speak on any item not on tonight's agenda. So if there's just something you want the Planning Commission to know about or hear about, this is your opportunity to do so. Let me start with people online. Is there anyone online who would like to address the commission about something not on tonight's agenda under oral communications? I don't see any hands going up. Okay, I'll extend that to folks who've come in to the chambers. Anything that you'd like to address the commission on? Okay. All right, I'll extend it to commissioners. Anything that you'd like to? Okay. Well, I'm going to make a plug for going back into local theater. You know, we're past COVID, and there's a lot of stuff going on right now. And the NCRT locally is opening Metro Maniacs down at on 6th Street, or sorry, on 6th Street, and Redwood Curtain is going to have their last performance or their last play in that space before that place gets taken over for something else. And they're doing The Book of Will, and that opens next week. And yours truly directed Sister Act down at Ferndale, which runs for 2 more weeks, directed and choreographed it. So it's been fun to see near full houses down there. So go see local theater, support the arts. All right, that's all I've got. All right, so public hearings continue. There's nothing under there. Public hearings new, nothing old business. Let's skip right to H, new business. And the first item is a martial arts studio. item H1, and I think we're going to have a staff report on that. I'd like to turn it over to staff. Is this Kristen Kenyon presenting, or
This is Kristen Getz presenting.
Kristen Getz presenting? Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. So the project before you tonight is a determination of use not listed for a martial arts studio in the CN Neighborhood Commercial Zone District. The applicant is proposing to locate a martial arts studio in the northeastern portion of Eureka, near the intersection of Myrtle and West Avenues in the CVS Shopping Center. The applicant proposes to lease an approximately 2,000 square foot vacant suite, which was previously occupied by Brosees Uniforms. And the building is located across Hill Street from a multifamily residential district, with the nearest residential structure approximately 65 feet away. As noted before, the property is in the Neighborhood Commercial Zone District, and it's also in the Coastal Zone. Martial arts studios are not a listed use in the Coastal Zoning Code. However, Article 23 of the Coastal Zoning Code allows the Planning Commission to determine whether an unlisted use should be allowed and whether it should be deemed a permitted or conditionally permitted use in one or more zone districts. And that determination is based on the similarity of the unlisted use to other specifically listed uses. The applicant is requesting a determination of use not listed to allow martial arts studios in the Neighborhood Commercial Zone District, which means martial arts studios would be allowed in any coastal CN district. Currently, there are only 2 clusters of land designated as coastal CN, and both of them are located along the northern side of Myrtle Avenue, which is the coastal zone boundary in this part of the city. Surrounding zone districts include coastal one-family residential, multifamily residential, public, and natural resource districts, as well as residential high on the inland side, neighborhood commercial, service commercial, and public facilities. The need for this determination is as a result of our outdated coastal zoning code, which lists very narrowly defined uses. Newer uses, which were not anticipated when the code was written, often don't fit neatly within a use category that is written into the code. The comprehensive update to the Inland Zoning Code attempted to address this issue by utilizing broader use categories. So, for example, the proposed martial arts studio would be a principally permitted use in the Inland CN Zone District under the broader use category of fitness, dance, or health facility small. Fitness, dance, or health facility small is defined as any sort of indoor fitness center, gymnasium, athletic club, dance studio, yoga studio, or other similar use less than 8,000 square feet in size. In contrast, under the Coastal Code, the use categories are much narrower, including things like music and dance studios, dance halls, gymnasiums, and massage and physical culture studios. None of these uses are defined by the code, and none clearly allow for martial arts studios. As described in the staff report, staff believes a martial arts studio could be found most similar to the principally permitted use music and dance studios not less than 150 feet from an R district. And the reason for that is that both of them are commercial service uses. They involve one genre of indoor physical activity. They have one type of workout space. They have scheduled classes and no shower facilities. The staff report presents 3 options for the Planning Commission. Alternative 1 would allow a martial arts studio in the CN district in the same manner as a music and dance studio, provided it was not less than 150 feet from the residential zone district. With this limitation, a martial arts studio would not be able to open at the applicant's proposed location in the CVS Shopping Center, since the location is less than 150 feet from a residential zone. The only place someone could then open a studio would be across West Avenue in the Beret Shopping Center in the area shown in maroon here. That area is more 150 feet or more from any residentially zoned district. Alternative 2 would allow martial arts studios in the CN district as similar to a music and dance studio without the 150-foot buffer from a residential zone. As further discussed in your staff report, the justification for not requiring a buffer could be because a martial arts studio does not raise the same noise issues as a music or dance studio. Under Alternative 2, a martial arts studio would be able to open at the applicant's proposed location. However, if the Planning Commission chooses option 2, staff recommends specifying a martial arts studio is allowed without a buffer from residential zones, provided the martial arts studio does not play loud music or otherwise generate amplified sounds plainly audible at a distance of 50 feet from the building in which the studio is located. The Commission could also decide a martial arts studio can be principally permitted in a CN district when it's located more than 150 feet from a residential zone, and conditionally permitted when it's located less than 150 feet from a residential zone. And Alternative 3 provides for this option in your staff report. Under Alternative 3, the applicant would be able to open his studio at the proposed location, but he would have to return first to the Planning Commission for a use permit and coastal development permit to do so. Staff is recommending the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to find the project is exempt from CEQA and adopt Alternative 2, determining a martial arts studio is principally permitted in the CN district without a buffer from residential zones, but with the 50-foot limitation for noise. And I do have slides with motions for each of the 3 alternatives, and I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Thank you for that staff report. It was really clear, and it's nice to have 3 alternatives. I appreciate you bringing those 3 to us. Let's maybe start with a little discussion amongst ourselves, and then we'll extend it for public comment.
Yeah, I just have one question to start before we take comment, and that's about the inland code. Is there a buffer requirement for the similar, more generic use type in the citywide code outside of the coastal zone?
No.
Okay, thank you.
2 questions. So are we still in process getting the coastal area zoned this way, or has that not come to pass at all?
We're still working on it.
Okay, so it's our intention to have mirroring language there.
Yes, it's the city's plan that the types of uses in the CN zone district in the coastal zone would match those that are currently allowed on the inland side of the city.
Okay.
Assuming the Coastal Commission will certify them.
That's meaningful to me. And what went into the staff's thinking that option 2 is the right one?
Looking for ways to support businesses, I think, was probably the number one way, while also being cognizant of potential noise impacts to adjacent residential uses. Both the CN districts are surrounded on multiple sides by residential uses. So if this is allowed, it could have the potential to have some impact on those residences. But we figured that this might be a happy medium and offered that to the Planning Commission.
My question is, it sounds like the proposed project is in the CVS Center, but you mentioned in your report that to be exempt from some of the sound conditions, a place like the Beret Center would be appropriate. Is that an alternative location for this business? Is there a space available for them? Is there an alternative proposal to be in that space, or are we just looking at the CVS space? Or near the CVS space.
So I believe the applicant had looked at one other location prior to this location. Kind of the same issue, I think, in the previous location, although I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly where that was, but I'm not aware of whether or not there might be space available in the Beret Center shopping center for him. So,
Okay. My last question, it's more out of curiosity than determination. Is this the same martial arts studio that we approved for 2nd Street earlier in the
no,
end of last year? Okay.
no, different.
Okay, thank you. Any other immediate questions? Okay, let's move to public comment. We'll hear people in the house first, in the chambers. If you have public comment on this, come right ahead and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Do I need to press any of these buttons, or do I need to?
Is the green light on?
Yes, it is.
You're fine.
So, good evening. Thank you all for reviewing, and thank you all for the staff report. My name is Timothias. I'm the applicant of the proposed martial art facility. I would also be the owner and the instructor for the potential martial art school. I could, if you'd like, discuss all of my credentials and ranks and such like that, but I don't think that's all that relevant to the proposed initiative. I would like to address some of the things that I heard as far as why the recommendation for number 2 was permitted, and I think it is in the report, page 6, it's at the bottom. The noise restriction can be eased because that intersection is one of the highest volume intersections in the city of Eureka. There are some good statistics there, and in my report that I provided to the planning department, I think that the noise from the traffic is going to produce more than I could from the studio, and I am probably the most loud and vocal person who will be in that studio giving directions and herding cats, as I like to say, because I primarily focus on children and families. So I don't think that I could at all project myself louder than the traffic around the busy intersection. And then to answer your question about the Burr Center, I have been on the search for a building for almost 8 months now. There is, if there was a unit in the Burr Center, I think that I might know, and unfortunately, to my understanding, there is not. The first location that I tried to secure was in the downtown district, in which case I would have had to go through the same conditional use permitting that the jiu-jitsu school that you asked about would have gone through, in which case I wasn't able to make those accommodations with my financing and with the landlords who were at that building. The landlords at this location are more than willing to accommodate the extra steps that I'm having to go through to open up. So once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening and for hopefully suggesting recommendation number 2. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Why don't you stay at the podium for just a moment in case any of us have questions for you? We
Yes.
don't always get the applicant, and so it's nice. I have a question for you. It sounds like the noise generated, you normally don't do any of your martial arts to music, is my understanding. I went on your webpage today too and saw the % children versus adults and your times and all that stuff. It sounds, and that you have mats and sound buffering, kinds of surfaces. It sounds to me like the main noise is probably a whole class doing kia, these kinds of vocalizations that, it's not a persistent sound. Is it something that happens multiple times repetitively in each class, like more than 25 times or is it something that happens, 3 or 4 times per class, or does that matters per belt or per how advanced the class is?
So if I understand the question, you're asking how many times might loud vocalizations happen in a class?
Yeah, and is it the entire class, and what's your average size class? I'm just trying to get a gauge on 50 feet away. Could I hear kia from outside the building?
I'm skeptical that from 50 feet away outside of the building that you would hear noises. And I think that the frequency of those vocalizations is going to depend, like you said, on the class age primarily and the style of warm-up that I would like to participate in that day. Not every class is the same, but like if you've seen Karate Kid, there's the classic scene of them, doing the kiyas. That might last for 10 minutes at class, maybe 2 or 3 classes, and not every one of them, mostly primarily for the kids. But I'm skeptical that you would hear that 50 feet away from outside of the building.
Thank you.
In a similar vein, what's the latest that you would expect to have classes?
Right now, my schedule stands with 3 classes a day in the 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 6 o'clock hours. I anticipate that the main part of instruction will probably only go, if you're thinking the last class starting in the 6 p.m. hour. 45 minutes would probably be the main part of instruction, in which case, after that, in my experience, people like to linger and hang out at martial arts studios. And, I would schedule the hours until 8 p.m. and I don't expect to be there much later, 8:30. If we were there past 8:30, it's not to work out, it's to chit chat about martial art techniques and kind of be martial art nerds.
Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Macias.
Thank you all for your time.
We'd like to hear other public comment. Okay, come on up.
Good evening, commissioners, and thank you to staff. That was a wonderful staff report. I really appreciated hearing that. Thank you, Kristen. My name is Hannah Joy. I am the Business Development and Loan Officer here representing the Arcata Economic Development Corporation. Just here to support Tim in Lost Coast Sansu. I've had the pleasure of getting to know his business plan and his background, and just wanted to say that we believe he will be an asset to any community that he joins. And on behalf of AEDC, we look forward to working with him further as he finds a location, and I would encourage the commission to move in favor of staff's recommendation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a few people online. Melissa Smith and DA, do either of you wish to comment on this proposal, on this project? Was that a no that I heard? Okay, all right. Okay, we'll bring it back to the commission and for further discussion.
I like this project. I appreciate that staff is trying to make this business friendly. I'm pretty comfortable given that this is where we think we're headed and this is what we're already doing in the inland zone. And that is a noisy intersection. When I took martial arts, it was loud, but I don't think it's louder than the traffic at that spot. And if we're not talking about something that would go into the late evening hours, I'm not inclined to myself to add conditions beyond. I'm pretty good with option 2, so that's just where I'm finding myself.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that, staff's report was very thorough, and I think it makes perfect sense to me to move forward with the suggested option that we've been given.
And I have nothing more to add. I feel the same way. This is kind of a no-brainer for me. So we have a motion up there. Would one of the commissioners like to make the motion?
I almost never make motions because we have people very good at it and we're typically playing with stuff, but I'll happily read what's on the slide there. I move the Planning Commission adopt a resolution finding this project is exempt from CEQA and determining a martial arts studio is similar to the existed use, music and dance studios, but does not raise the same noise concerns, and is therefore principally permitted in the CN district without a 150-foot residential district buffer limitation, provided the martial arts studio does not play loud music or otherwise generate amplified sounds plainly audible at a distance of 50 feet from the building in which the studio is located.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any final discussion on this? Okay, hearing none, let's put it to the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, no abstentions. The motion passes. So, Mr. Macias, thank you very much for bringing this Samso Gongfu to our community for for people of all ages. Best of luck in that business location.
Thank you all so much.
Mm-hmm. Okay, general plan annual progress report. And we're going to receive a report from staff tonight on that.
So before you tonight is the General Plan Annual Progress Report, or APR, for 2022, and the city is required by state law to present the APR to the City Council and also to submit it to the State Office of Planning and Research. Staff is recommending you receive the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Other than that, I don't have a presentation for you on this one.
Oh, thank you, because we've had a lot of presentations on this over many, many months, and we've gotten to speak in great detail about
I'll
it.
get you on the next one, though.
Okay. That's right.
So we aren't being asked to make a formal recommendation to the City Council.
Just receive the report.
Okay.
Does staff have, does anyone on the commission have comments on that report in particular?
You know, one thing that I would just say is that the general plan annual progress reports don't have a formal structure, and they're kind of a new thing to be required. So it was interesting to see, you know, how staff chose to structure it. In the city of Arcata, we take sort of like our year in review and then see what general plan policies those speak to. And this was sort of the opposite. You know, here are policies. This is how we acted, you know, to meet those policies. So it was an interesting read, just, you know, comparing how different folks address the requirements of the state differently. And I like the way that it was structured. So thank you for bringing it before us.
My question is, was this also available for the public to review the annual progress report? And do we take public comment on this? Or do we just receive it as a report?
You can choose to take public comment on it. That's up to you. It was available on the City Council's agenda. It will be posted on the city's website after both the Planning Commission and City Council have received it. The City Council didn't make it to this item on their last agenda, and so it's been continued to their second meeting this month. So you're receiving this before they actually do.
Okay, well, since we are, it might be nice for them to have some idea of what public comment might be. So I would like to open it up to public comment tonight. If there's anyone online, there's no one left in the chambers. If you wish to comment on the general plan annual progress report, you may. This would be the time. I don't see any hands up, so I'm thinking there won't be any public comment on this. Thank you for providing this report. It was interesting to read and interesting to see the progress that's being made. Okay, moving on then to H3, the Housing Element Annual Progress Report. And it looks like we are going to have a staff report on this, so go ahead.
So while we did have some forward progress on our general plan, our concentration this year happened to have been on the housing element, doing a housing element amendment. So the last item before you this evening is the required annual progress report for our housing element, and it covers January 1st to December 31st of 2022. Similar to the general plan annual progress report, or APR, the city must provide the report on the housing element to the State Office of Planning and Research and to the State Office of Housing and Community Development. State housing element law requires the city to accommodate a share of the total projected housing needs for Humboldt County for the planning period, which is also called a cycle. This share, called the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA, is important because state law mandates each jurisdiction provide sufficient land to accommodate a variety of housing opportunities for all economic segments of the community. Compliance with this requirement is measured by the jurisdiction's ability to provide adequate land with adequate density and appropriate development standards to accommodate the RHNA. The Humboldt County Association of Governments, or HCOG, as the regional planning agency, is responsible for allocating the RHNA to individual jurisdictions in the region. For the current housing element 6th cycle, which covers 2019 to 2027, the jurisdictions within Humboldt County have been allocated a total of 3,390 dwelling units. The total RHNA allocation for the county is distributed across the 4 housing income levels, which include very low income, moderate, and above moderate income. HCOG then assigns the RENA for each incorporated city and the unincorporated portion of the county, and for this cycle, the city of Eureka was assigned 952 units. This graph shows the city of Eureka's RENA allocation in orange as compared to the overall countywide allocation in blue by income level, with the city responsible for 231 very low income units, 147 low income units, 172 moderate income units, and 402 above moderate income units. So originally, the city's housing element divided sites available for development of housing into two categories. The first was housing development on non-site specific parcels, which meant the parcels were not specifically listed in the housing element by parcel number. The second was site specific, and these were specifically identified by parcel number in the housing element. Housing development on non-site specific parcels could be created through construction of accessory and or junior accessory dwelling units, small lot and conservation subdivisions, and division or conversion of existing space. Development on site-specific parcels could be created on either vacant or non-vacant sites. Those also included the housing on city-owned lots. So the city was supposed to construct 160 dwelling units as a result of each development type for a total of 480 units by the end of the cycle, and these were on the non-site specific sites. In early 2021, when the city started working on an amendment to the housing element to update the list of sites available for development on city-owned property, the State Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, determined we had not been making enough progress toward the projected development on non-specific sites. Even if I included information from this year's annual report, only 54 units on non-site specific parcels received a certificate of occupancy between 2019 and 2022. And at the end of 2022, we are halfway through the housing element cycle, and we need 426 more units in these development categories, which means we've only completed 11% of the units that we actually needed. So in the housing element update, while we can still count dwelling units created on non-site specific parcels in our arena, we're not going to rely on them to show we have adequate land with adequate density and appropriate development standards. So the city tracks and reports to HCD the total number of building permits that are submitted each year for residential uses. And we also track when a building permit is approved, which means the plans were submitted and have been reviewed for conformance with building, fire, planning, and public works requirements, and that the permit is actually ready to be issued, but hasn't actually been issued yet. Issuance of residential building permits is the third thing that we do track. And when a building permit is issued, it means that the fees have been paid and work can begin on the site. And lastly, we track and report when a certificate of occupancy is granted for a residence. Certificate of occupancy means all of the required inspections have been completed and passed, and owners or renters can start living in the residence. One thing to keep in mind as we review the information relating to the number of building permits, except when we include prior years, the information shown in the report is only for the building permits where applied, approved, issued, or received a certificate of occupancy between January 1st and December 31st, 2022. So if someone applied for a permit in 2018 and it was approved a couple of months later, but they didn't actually pick it up until the summer of 2019, and then it took them almost 2 years to finish the project and get a certificate of occupancy, that permit would show up in 3 different housing element APRs. It would show up as applied and approved in 2018, issued in 2019. It would not show up on the 2020 report, and we were reported as having received a certificate of occupancy in 2021. There may also be building permits which are completed in the same year, and then the permit would only show up on one housing element APR, but in all 4 of the categories that we report. Clear as mud, I hope. So Here are the residential building permits which were submitted in 2022, and I'm showing them by income level. We had 109 residential permit applications total. And if we add in the total building permit applications submitted from 2019 through 2021, then there's an additional 297 units, which totals applications for 406 dwelling units. For building permits actually approved in 2022, we had a total of 89 dwelling units. And adding in the 69 units approved between 2019 and 21, we've approved 158 dwelling units. A total of 85 permits were issued in 2022, with 38 issued between 2019 and 2021, for a total of 123 dwelling units. And finally, a total of 54 dwelling units received a certificate of occupancy in 2022, with 109 certificates issued between 2019 and 2021, for a total of 163 newly created dwelling units since 2019. And finally, keeping in mind, we only have to maintain adequate land with adequate density and appropriate development standards to accommodate our arena. And since HC disallowed some of those units, while we do not have showing here on your screen is the arena by income level for 2022 and 2019 through 21. And that's the total units that we've provided. And here is our arena, 952 units required for the 6th cycle, 175 total issued, 777 remaining arena units, certificates of occupancy issued for 163, and remaining arena units for C of O's is 789. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can for you.
So if I'm understood your report correctly, we're at 11% overall of the target that we would like to be at. So it's not a very high grade.
The 11% was with the non-site specific sites. So that was with development of accessory structures, junior accessory structures, subdivisions, or conversion of existing structures to residential uses. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we've kind of set those aside. We're not discounting them, but we've gone a different direction and now concentrate on development on sites that are specifically listed in the housing element. So there's a whole list in the housing element of a bunch of different assessor parcel numbers. And there are numbers of units that are assigned to each of those that we're hoping will be developed on those sites.
And strategically, it looks like there's success by changing tactics.
Ask me next year.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was just about to say, for the non-site specifics, I think we're at 0% instead of 11% currently, because we have no actual certificates of occupancy or even building permits for any of those sites at this point, do we?
We had the 11%. Those have actually happened since 2019, and those do count towards our arena numbers. But like I say, we're going in a different direction for the purposes of which numbers are included to prove that we can do the 952 units versus other ones that we might get that are extra.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, and I think that Eureka's trying really hard. Partially this is just to ensure that the city isn't creating undue barriers to development, and I don't think we are. So if they come, we're ready for them.
My other question is, I noticed in the tables that you presented that there were a lot of building permits for the very low income, not disproportionate, either even higher numbers in some cases. But then when it came to certificates of occupancy, it seemed like the conversion at the very low income versus the low income or the middle income, et cetera, was much lower. Can you help us understand that a little bit better?
I don't know what the reason is for that. It just seems like, folks apply for building permits, and then for whatever reason, as we go through the approved, issued, and certificate of occupancy, it just continues to kind of go step down. One of the things that we are doing as an implementation program for the housing element is that we are working on preparing a survey for folks who have applied for building permits and or have gone through the a process or a project with the planning department. And I'm hoping that maybe some of those survey responses will help us identify where folks are dropping out of the process, so to speak, or just not completing their applications.
Another small question. Looking at ADUs and subdivisions and conversions, the different types of building permits, do you include in your calculations building permits that don't add more habitation, like seismic retrofitting and stuff like that? Is that not included in, or is it included in the building permit?
So we count the number of dwelling units that exist or are proposed, depending on which numbers we're looking at. You could have 2 units that are proposed with the initial application, and then for whatever reason, maybe they're down to 1 by the time it actually gets approved. We haven't had any that are like that because that's something that we would have to report to HCD2, but I mean, that possibility certainly could exist. Occasionally, we do have an application for a single dwelling unit, which we then have to come back and say, you need to add another one to this one so that you can have multifamily, because maybe they're in a multifamily zone district and that's required now.
Yeah, thank you for answering that question, because I would have expected there to be a lot more building permits for garages and things that don't result in a habitable unit.
I have a couple curiosity questions about the process and what this looks like going forward. Does HCD police the 2 upper income categories of housing, the moderate and above moderate, the same as the very low and low? If you fall flat on your RENA for above moderate, does anything happen?
I think if they were going to come back on the city for anything, it would be for any income level.
For any, okay. And, I salute how much work has gone into this. It's clear the city is trying very hard. The city staff is trying hard. The council's working on it. It's controversial. It's emotional. It's a heavy lift. I do wonder, you pivoted to the site-specific ones, and we're kind of squeezing out the towel when it comes to city-owned lots that you can do that with. What are you thinking about the next cycle? What's planned as city lots become rare?
That's a really good question.
My first one.
No, not your first one. So yeah, looking ahead to the 7th cycle, we of course don't at this point in time know what our RENA numbers are going to be that come from the state. I actually just found out today that there's going to be a meeting, and the state is possibly looking at assigning those numbers in a different way. I'm not sure what they're thinking, so we'll let you know when we know more. But the state uses, as I understand it, a complicated formula that comes from the State Department of Finance on how many dwelling units we should be having, how much our growth is anticipated to be over the course of the cycle, and a number of other things. And from that, they derive the number of dwelling units that are assigned to the county as a whole. And then HCOG has a process that they go through and assigns out to each of the incorporated cities and to the unincorporated part of Humboldt County. So last cycle we had, I think it was 652 units, and we kind of felt during the 5th cycle that was probably about as much as we were going to be able to produce or show that we could produce. if we hadn't if we had not have made the changes that we did in the inland zoning code, we would not be able to figure out a way to provide 952 units for this cycle. So that's helped immensely. By the next cycle, I would hope that we would have similar zoning regulations in the coastal zone. So the number of units that could be allowed in the coastal zone should increase and be available for that seventh cycle. But yeah, it's going to be a challenge, I think, when it comes time to figure out what we're doing for the next cycle.
And using whatever family size you want to, just remind me of the 4 income levels, where the dollars land. So, family of 3, whatever.
For the very low, I don't have that information with me. I apologize.
Okay.
City manager has it memorized almost, and I'm sorry that I don't. What I can do, though, is I can provide the information to all of the commissioners after the meeting.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Thank you. We've heard those numbers before,
I know.
but we forget them.
I do think, they're surprisingly high.
Yeah.
Even for, low income and moderate income, it's, 50,000, something like that for a family of 4 or even higher. So it's people who work, who are often categorized as lower moderate income.
Is there any other questions or conversation among commissioners? Again, this is another topic because, as Commissioner Kraft said, it's complex and potentially weighted and emotional for our community. I'd like to open this up to public comment for folks who are online. If you want to comment on the annual progress report for the housing element, you can do so now. Don't see any hands raised, so okay, we'll close public comment. Okay, thank you for that report. It's always good to be updated on that. Okay, moving on to directors' reports and communications. Do you have a report for us tonight?
A short one, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Just wanted to let you know that the request for proposals for housing on city-owned properties, so the parking lot at 5th and D Streets, the parking lot at 6th and L Streets, and the 3 lots from C to F Street, that went out on Friday, very late in the afternoon, but it's out there now. So we've actually done it in 2 separate RFPs. So the 2 parking lots are in 1 RFP, and they have a period of 60 days to respond to us with proposals for development. The C to F Street sites have 120-day time to respond for those sites, either individually or merging one or more together. So we have our fingers crossed that we'll have responses from folks and look forward to reviewing those when they do come in.
And will those be brought forward to us, or once projects get under development, at any point will we get to hear more about it?
I can always update you about them.
Mm-hmm.
The respondents will go, the recommendations from the selection committee that will be set up will go directly to the city council. You may see something for use permits or coastal development permits for the C to F sites, and probably less than likely that you would actually have a design review to act on. But again, we can certainly share details with you as time goes by.
Yeah, it would be good to always be updated on that, because I know that there's potential for there being proponents and opponents to those particular projects, and just like to be in the know. All right, thank you so much.
I'll just add, salute all the work that's been done, the staff, and I caught maybe the last half hour of that city council meeting on Access Humboldt, and they were grinding and it went late, and that's why I'm sure that we got the previous report before they did. it's really been a slog, and just salute everyone who's continuing to push forward.
Okay, other reports and communications. Okay, only thing left on the agenda is to adjourn. Thanks to the commissioners and for the public for coming, and to staff for always staying late for these. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.